Hello peeps, welcome back to Big Deck Player with me, Matt Sparks. On today's show, we are taking a look at a Shaman deck, and I wanted to try and squeeze one more Big Deck Player in before the release of the Grand Tournament, which should be any time now, probably next week, depending on when you're watching this. But this is Ottigan's top 50 legend rank mid-range Shaman. So, here's the deck list. We're going to start from the top, as we always do. It's a pretty interesting deck. It's similar to the sort of play style that I'm used to, with a little bit of control in there, because it's a mid-range, so you want to have a little bit of control towards the beginning of the match, but then using your slightly bigger minions towards the end of the game to then start really doing some damage. We have two silences in the form of Earthshock at 1 mana, obviously dealing 1 damage to it after it has been silenced. So this is particularly good against Leper Gnomes and Argent Squires. Maybe even the Loot Hoarders, very nice against those. It's also good against handlocks that use the Twilight Drakes, as Twilight Drakes naturally only have 1 health. We have 2 Rockbiter weapons, good for trading with smaller minions, using smaller minions, buffing them up with more attack so they can trade with bigger minions, but also very good to combo with some other things in the deck for more damage. We have 2 Zombie Chow. Now you kind of want to get these within the first sort of 2 or 3 turns of playing. So obviously when you're starting the game you want a mulligan to have the Zombie Chows in your hand. Getting them sort of mid to late game, they're not as good and you kind of want to just use them for control, but at that point in the game there's probably not very many things that they're actually going to be able to kill straight out. Here's one we haven't seen for a while. It's Blood Mage Thalnos for that extra spell damage. Keeping him in your hand to combo with some spells for board clear and stuff could be really useful, especially if we've got the spell damage totem, the Wrath of Air totem out on the board as well, giving that an extra bit of potency. And obviously you get a bit of card draw from the Death Rattle. 2 Flame Tongue totems, because it's a Shaman deck, and what Shaman deck would be complete without a Flame Tongue totem? You know, it's one of the core features of the Shaman decks, and it's great having an extra 4 attack on the board to your minions. Allows small minions, as I mentioned earlier, with similar to the Rockbite weapon, allows smaller minions to trade with higher cost minions, or you can just use it to go straight for face and do extra damage to your opponent. It also kind of acts as a soft taunt, because your opponent's going to want to get rid of it before they get rid of anything else, because it poses such a threat to them. We have 2 Haunted Creepers, pretty nice, especially when you combo it with the stuff like the Rockbite weapon and the Flame Tongue totem, giving it that extra punch and allowing it to trade better. And obviously when it does, you get those 2/1/1 Spectral Spiders, which if they're already alive, before you play the Flame Tongue, you can put the Flame Tongue between them, enabling you to have 2 3/1 Spiders. 1 Feral Spirit, just the one. There's not an awful lot of spells in this deck that have Overload, which is quite nice, but obviously you've got to take that into consideration whenever you play a Shaman deck, if you've got anything that has Overload. If you play this turn 3, it means turn 4 you're only going to have 2 mana. So you have to plan ahead whenever you use any of these cards that have Overload in them. But 2/3 Wolves with Taunt for 3 mana is really, really good. I mean, that's essentially a 4/6 for 3. If you look at it that way, which is amazing, and you're not really likely to get a natural 4/6 for 3 mana anywhere, I don't think. So Feral Spirit, excellent card. We have 2 Hex. I would suggest that you probably keep these for mid to late game when you're choosing your cards in your starting hand. So if you do get one of these in your starting hand, you might want to mulligan it out in the hope to get maybe a Zombie Chow or a Haunted Creeper or something. We have 2 Lightning Storms. Now this is what I meant earlier about having the Blood Mage Thalnos. Chances are you're probably not going to need a Lightning Storm on turn 3. So if you can get your Blood Mage Thalnos in your hand and the Lightning Storm, then you've got, at 5 mana, you've got a pretty decent board clear. Also at 3 mana we have a Big Game Hunter, which, you know, it's kind of a staple for most decks at the moment, just because almost everyone is running a Dr. Boom or a Ragnaros or something of that ilk. So destroying a minion with attack of 7 or more is almost 100% necessary in these games. We have a Manatide Totem. I'm not too keen on the Manatide Totem, because for 3 mana you're only guaranteed 1 card. If you're lucky enough to get 2 cards, then that's great. If you happen by some miraculous occurrence to get more than 2 cards out of it, I think you've got value. But I don't like it because it's only a guaranteed 1, because it's only at the end of the turn. Your opponent is not likely to want to let you keep that out. At 4 mana we have a Defender of Argus. Now this is also quite good for helping protect your mana tide totem if your mana tide totem is out. Giving adjacent minions +1/+1 and taunt. Very useful for Haunted Creeper because it's got the death rattle, so it's probably going to die at some point anyway, and you kind of want it to die so you get those extra spiders. At 4 mana we also have a Piloted Shredder. In fact we have 2 Piloted Shredders because Piloted Shredders are awesome. They're in almost every deck, I think, that I've been featuring. They always seem to crop up, that's for sure. The only time that they're not cool is when the random 2-cost minion that they summon is a Doomsayer. At 5 mana, another card that we don't see very often is the Doomhammer. 2/8 with Wind Fury with an overload of 2. So again, make sure you plan out your next move because you'll have 2 mana less. So if you play this turn 5, on turn 6 you'll only have 4 mana. Doomhammer combos very, very nicely with Rockbiter Weapon. If you've got both your Rockbiter weapons, you can put both of those onto yourself, making Doomhammer hit for 8, except that it's got Wind Fury, so it actually hits for 16. That's like just over half your opponent's health. That is a winning combination right there. At 5 mana also we have 2 Azure Drakes for a little bit of card draw and a little bit of spell damage. That will increase the spell damage on your Lightning Storms. Azure Drakes seem to crop up in almost every deck. I mean, these are really old cards now. I mean, they came out well over a year ago, and yet they're still being put into decks. That's how good they are. Same as Defender of Argus. They're still getting put into decks because they're that good. We have a Harrison Jones, a slightly more reliable way of getting card draw, provided that your opponent has a weapon. Otherwise he's pretty useless. Although a 5/4 for 5 isn't awful, it's not brilliant. Lastly, at 5 mana we have Lotheb to increase the spell cost of your enemy's spells by 5, helping hopefully to protect your minions on the board from board clears and AoEs. At 6 mana we have 2 Fire Elementals because Fire Elementals are awesome. A 6/5 for 6 and it deals 3 damage when you put it out onto the board, helping you get rid of something on the board before you even put the minion down, which is fantastic. At 7 mana we have a Dr. Boom because it's Dr. Boom. I really don't need to tell you much more about him, he's pretty awesome. And finally at 8 mana we have Alakir the Windlord, the Shaman legendary, who has Wind Fury, Charge, Divine Shield and Taunt because he's really greedy and he wants to have everything. This is another great target for your Rockbiter weapons because he has Wind Fury, and you get the most out of your Rockbiter weapons when you put it on a minion with Wind Fury. So he hits a bit harder than the Doomhammer, but obviously he costs a bit more. But turn 10 you can put Alakir out, and because he has Charge he can attack straight away. You can put both of your Rockbiters onto him, which means he hits for 9 twice, hitting for 18 damage in total, which is pretty good really, isn't it? I mean, you can't really complain about that kind of damage. So that's the deck. It's pretty cool. As I say, it's a mid-range. You want to try and use your small minions and your spells to control the game to begin with. Keep hold of your Rockbiter weapons if you can for those big hitting Wind Fury hits later in the game. And then if you still need to do damage, you've got stuff like your Azure Drake, your Fire Elementals, Lotheb, Dr. Boom, to be able to do some more damage if you need it. But I've played a few games with it so far, and there's some nice combos to be had with the Rockbiters. If you can get away with not using them until then I would suggest you do that because it's quite satisfying when you can put both Rockbiters onto like your Doomhammer or something. It's very, very fun. Very fun indeed. So that's the deck. As per usual, there will be a link in the description which will take you to hearthstone.com where you can find this deck. Give Ottigan a thumbs up on this deck because it is a lot of fun, and you don't see an awful lot of Shamans being used at the moment. I think that'll probably change in the Grand Tournament, so you might want to use this deck just to kind of re-familiarise yourself with how Shamans work. I will see you next week. It's probably going to be a bit different next week because of the Grand Tournament coming out, and I don't know how many decks are actually going to be available. I don't know how many cards I'm going to have, or from the packs that I've already pre-purchased. I don't know quite how it's going to work, but I'm sure I'll be able to fling something together for you. That'll be a lot of fun. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next week for the Grand Tournament. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.